Hello, everyone, and welcome back to her Fireside Stories. Thank you for joining me again by our cozy virtual fireplace. I never thought I'd hear the word ugly from my own daughter, but on a stormy night standing on her porch with a half-burned suitcase in my hand, I heard exactly that. And in that moment, I knew if she no longer had room for me in her perfect little world, then I would build one of my own where I'd never be cast aside again. I used to believe that if you raised your children right, taught them kindness, worked hard to give them a decent life, sacrificed your own comforts, they would remember you on the simplest of days, like Mother's Day, or at least pick up the phone and say, "Mom, how are you?" Maybe slip in an "I love you." If they were feeling sentimental, I'm Catherine Maloney, 72 years old, living in a quaint little house on Robin Street. It has a yard with a peeling white fence, an old maple tree that I planted with my late husband 30 years ago, and a porch swing that squeaks if you rock too hard. It's not grand or fancy, but it holds decades of memories, birthday parties, scraped knees, family dinners, and quiet moments with a cup of tea. I'm no stranger to the complexities of life. I've seen heartache, lost my husband 10 years back to a sudden heart attack. I've watched my children grow up, move out, start their own families and careers. There's Adrian, the oldest, who's a real estate agent in the next state. Then Janine, the middle child, who's married with 2 kids and lives a few hours away. And finally, Luke, the youngest, always chasing some music career or road tripping with his band. They've all got full lives, busy lives or so, they tell me. In early May this year, I tried not to hope too hard. I told myself, they're grown-ups, Catherine. They have obligations. But some small part of my heart still ached for them to call to remember. After all, we had many good years together. Surely that was worth a phone call. Last year, at least, Janine called me late in the evening to apologize for forgetting most of the day. She let her kids babble Happy Mother's Day. Grandma over speakerphone. I cherished that moment, though it stung, that it came as an afterthought. Adrian sent a text message that read, "Sorry, working an open house. HMD." Luke was off in another state playing a gig. I got a short text from him 2 days later. My motherly instincts told me, at least they made contact, but it left me feeling hollow. Still, I believed that this year might be different. The day before Mother's Day, I busied myself with small tasks. I baked brownies just in case they decided to drop by. I set fresh flowers from my garden on the dining table, daisies and lilacs that smelled sweetly of early spring. Then I tidied the living room, rearranging the framed photos of them I keep on the mantel. Adrian's high school graduation, Janine's wedding portrait, Luke at his first band concert. I studied each picture, remembering simpler days, times when I was their world and they were mine. When Sunday morning came, I woke early. A beam of sunlight hit the crocheted blanket at the foot of my bed. I took a deep breath, hoping my phone might ring. By 8 o'clock, no calls. By 10, still nothing. They're probably sleeping in, I told myself. Maybe they'll call at noon, around noon. The neighborhood was alive with families packing into cars, presumably heading to brunches or visits with mothers. I made myself a cup of tea and tried reading a novel, but I was too restless. They'll call soon. The hours ticked by in silence. Noon gave way to afternoon. Afternoon crawled toward evening. Still no word from Adrian or Janine or Luke. My heart sank deeper with each passing hour. I tried to swallow the lump in my throat. My next-door neighbor Jill popped by with a small plate of homemade cookies, wishing me a happy Mother's Day. I thanked her, forcing a smile that felt brittle on my face. She asked if the kids were coming. They might. I lied, later tonight, maybe. By dinner time, reality settled in. I paced the kitchen phone in hand. Should I call them instead? Would that be too desperate? I didn't want them to think I was a burden, so I just did nothing. I curled up on the couch in my quiet house, trying not to let the tears fall. My children had forgotten me entirely. No calls, no texts, not even a 2-second message. The day ended in silence. I blew out the candles on the table, took the flowers to the sink, and turned off the lights. The brownies sat untouched beneath their plastic cover. I crawled into bed feeling like a discarded relic. It's strange how numbness and bitterness can mingle inside a person's chest. I knew I loved my children, but at that moment a wave of resentment welled up. Is this what motherhood amounts to after all these years? I barely slept that night, my mind swirling with memories of tucking them in at bedtime, of bandaging scraped knees, of birthdays and holiday feasts. How quickly the warmth of those moments could vanish under the cold reality of being forgotten. The next morning, a Monday, was dreary and overcast. I shuffled around my house in slippers, trying to drown my sorrows in chores I vacuumed. The living room carpet dusted the shelves, even rummaged through the attic in search of something to keep me busy. But the emptiness hovered a heavy blanket I couldn't shake off, eventually feeling caged. I decided to walk to the local park. A bit of fresh air might chase away the heaviness in my heart, so I donned my comfortable shoes, grabbed an umbrella just in case, and set off for Lincoln Park a few blocks away. On the sidewalk, I passed families hurrying to their Monday routines, a mother hustling her child to the school bus, a father jogging with a stroller. I tried not to stare, not to let envy gnaw at me. At least they're together, I thought. At least they see each other. It reminded me that once upon a time, I had that too. Reaching Lincoln Park's entrance, I slipped onto a wooden bench near the duck pond. The breeze carried the smell of cut grass and damp earth. I let my gaze linger on the rippling water on a few ducks waddling by. Something about the gentle scene soothed me, if only for a moment I shut my eyes, thinking about how life can change so drastically. 10 years ago, I never would have imagined sitting here feeling like the loneliest mother in the world. Suddenly, a voice broke through my reverie. "Excuse me, ma'am? Are you all right?" I opened my eyes to see a stranger standing nearby. A young man in his early 20s, perhaps with a kind face. He wore a slightly worn hoodie and carried a small backpack. Brown hair fell across his forehead, and there was concern in his hazel eyes. I swallowed, trying to speak without sounding pitiful. "I'm fine, thank you. Just resting?" He gave me a gentle nod. "It's a bit chilly this morning. Are you sure you're okay?" A small, wavering smile tugged at my lips. "I appreciate your concern, but yes, I'm fine." A wave of unexpected gratitude flooded me. In that moment, a total stranger cared enough to ask if I was all right. And on Mother's Day weekend, my own children hadn't even called. The young man nodded slowly, lingering a moment, then he said, "Well, if you need anything, let me know." "Okay, my name's James." I just nodded, uncertain what to say. Watching him walk away, I felt a curious pang, like a glimmer of human connection on a day when I desperately needed it. Little did I know that single encounter would be the first step toward a twist in my lonely routine, a twist that would remind me that sometimes comfort and kindness can come from the most unexpected sources. The hours trickled by as I sat there soaking up the quiet calm of Lincoln Park. A few joggers passed by, nodding politely. An older couple strolled hand in hand, feeding breadcrumbs to the ducks. Occasionally, a child would burst onto the scene with an explosion of laughter, only to vanish around a corner with a harried parent in tow. I almost forgot about my sorrow, lulled by the park's gentle rhythm. But just when I decided it was time to leave, the sky grumbled with an ominous roll of thunder. Dark clouds gathered overhead and a light drizzle began to fall. I fumbled with my umbrella, cursing my stiff fingers, and realized I'd better hurry home before the rain got worse. With one last glance at the pond, I rose from the bench, hoping this dreary weather wasn't a metaphor for my life. I made it halfway through the park before the drizzle became a steady shower. Water dripped from my umbrella's edges, splashing onto my shoes. I picked up my pace, scanning for the shortest route home, but my knees complained at the sudden brisk walk. As I passed a line of maple trees, I spotted a silhouette huddled under one of them, a figure hunched over a small backpack. A second glance told me it was James, the young man who'd approached me earlier. He was perched on a damp patch of grass, rummaging through his bag. He wore no coat, and the hoodie was already soaked through. Something in me hesitated. He didn't look homeless, just unprepared for the sudden downpour, but I saw no reason for him to just sit there getting drenched. I cleared my throat, stepping closer. "Excuse me, James." The rain pattered on my umbrella, punctuating the silence. "Do you need some shelter, a place to wait out the storm?" He looked up, startled. Raindrops clung to his eyelashes. "Oh, hi. I'm okay. Just got stuck in the rain. Didn't realize it would come down this fast." I offered a tentative smile. "I live not too far from here. If you want, you could walk with me and dry off a bit. It's not safe to stay out like this. You'll catch a cold." He hesitated, glancing at my umbrella, then at the soggy grass around him. "I don't want to impose." "Ma'am, call me Catherine," I said, holding the umbrella out a bit so he could step beneath it. "And you're not imposing. It's the neighborly thing to do. Come on." After a moment, he nodded. Slinging his backpack over one shoulder, he joined me under the small canopy, and together we started walking. The path out of the park felt longer than usual, with the wind blowing rain in sideways gusts. Our feet squelched over muddy patches, and the gray sky rumbled above us. I tried making conversation to distract from the damp chill. "So, James, do you live around here?" He shook his head. "Not exactly. I'm traveling through for a bit, looking for work, maybe." His answer was vague, but I didn't pry. We all have our journeys, and some are more complicated than others. Once we exited the park, it was a 2-block walk to my house. My old home came into view, paint flaking on the fence, daisies drooping from the rain in the flower bed. I felt a twinge of embarrassment. My house certainly wasn't a showstopper. But James didn't seem bothered. He just looked relieved to be out of the downpour. As I unlocked the front door, I flicked on the porch light. "Well, it's not much," I said apologetically, "but it's warm and dry." We stepped inside to the comforting, slightly musty scent of an older home. I quickly slipped off my wet shoes, gesturing for James to do the same. Then I led him to the living room, where I kept a stack of folded towels on a shelf. "Here, dry yourself off." He took the towel, gratefully patting down his hair and hoodie. "Thank you. I really appreciate this." I waved a dismissive hand. "Nonsense. You'd do the same if our situations were reversed, right?" I remembered how he'd worried about me earlier on that bench, and a small smile tugged at my lips. "Is it okay if I sit?" he asked, eyeing the floral-patterned couch with caution. "Of course. Let me get you something warm to drink." I hurried into the kitchen, filling the kettle with water. The clang of metal on the stove felt oddly comforting. A million thoughts danced in my mind. Should I trust a stranger this way? Yes, but he seems nice. Should I ask more about his story? I don't want to pry. And overshadowing it all, a tinge of gratitude that at least someone was here sharing a moment of kindness. A far cry from the deafening silence of Mother's Day. When I returned with a steaming mug of tea, James was examining the photos on my mantel, my children's faces frozen in time. He turned when he heard me enter. "Your family?" he asked softly. I nodded, setting the mug on the coffee table. "Yes, my kids. They're all grown now." He offered a small smile. "They look happy." A lump formed in my throat. I nodded again, not trusting myself to speak. Instead, I gestured for him to sit. We settled into 2 armchairs across from each other. The living room lamp cast a warm glow, reflecting off the rain-streaked windows. I decided to keep things light. "So, James, are you new in town?" He cupped the mug, letting the warmth seep into his fingers. "Sort of. I've been drifting for a while, to be honest. Stayed in a different city last month, but it didn't work out. I have a friend who said there might be some odd jobs around here, construction yard work, that kind of thing. He shrugged. It's just me and my backpack until something sticks. I nodded, wondering what could have sent a young man wandering like this. Well, there's a bulletin board at the library downtown. People often post help wanted flyers. Might be worth checking. He nodded. Yeah, thanks. I'll do that. A comfortable silence settled between us, punctuated by the tapping of rain on the roof. For the first time since yesterday's disappointment, I felt a sense of calm. Maybe it was just the relief of not being alone. Maybe it was seeing that kindness can still exist in unexpected places. I glanced at the clock, nearly 7 in the evening. My stomach rumbled and I realized I hadn't eaten much all day. James, I said, rising from my chair. You must be hungry. I made brownies yesterday. Let me see if I can throw together something more substantial for dinner. He started to protest, but I waved him off. Let me. I'd feel better if you had a full belly before you go wandering in the rain again. His cheeks colored slightly, as if unused to such hospitality. Thank you, Catherine. You're too kind. I headed to the kitchen, heart lighter than it had been in a while. Perhaps it was unorthodox taking in a near stranger like this, but something about James's polite demeanor, the genuine concern in his eyes, made me want to help. Or maybe I was simply yearning for a sense of purpose, a chance to fill the emptiness I'd felt so strongly on Mother's Day. As I rummaged through the pantry, pulling out pasta and a can of tomato sauce, I dared a small hopeful thought. Maybe I won't be so alone this evening after all. My makeshift dinner wasn't anything special. Just spaghetti with jarred sauce sprinkled with whatever herbs I found in my spice rack, but the aroma of tomato and basil filled the kitchen. And by the time I called James over to set the table, my stomach was growling. I warmed some leftover garlic bread I had in the freezer, and within minutes, we were seated at the small dining table, steam rising from our plates. James took one bite and let out a soft, which made me chuckle. You're either very polite or very hungry, I teased. He grinned. Both probably. Then he glanced around the dining room where crocheted doilies covered every surface. This house feels so lived in, comfortable. I felt a surge of pride. Thank you. I've tried to keep it that way. It's old like me, but I like to think it still has charm. Between bites we chatted. He told me he'd grown up in a small town up north, but left when his father lost his job, the family scattering to find work. James had tried college but dropped out after a year feeling lost and uncertain. Now he drifted, hoping to land somewhere. He felt he could rebuild a life. He spoke with a quiet earnestness, no trace of self-pity. What about you? He asked between forkfuls of pasta. You said you have kids, right? Do they live nearby? A shadow flickered over my heart. I sipped water, choosing my words carefully. They live elsewhere, busy with their own lives. I don't see them much. My mouth tightened involuntarily. Yesterday was Mother's Day and, well, they got busy, I guess. James's face felt genuine sympathy in his eyes. I'm sorry, that's rough. You deserve better. I shrugged, forcing a small smile. They mean well. I'm sure life just pulls people in different directions. He nodded, letting the topic rest, but his empathy warmed me more than I cared to admit. By the time we finished eating, the rain had eased into a soft drizzle. James helped clear the plates, insisting I sit while he rinsed the dishes. Watching him tidily stack the plates was a reminder of the small courtesies I used to share with my family. It tugged at my heartstrings. When the kitchen was clean, I asked if he wanted to stay the night given the bad weather. A part of me was wary. Was it safe? But something about James's gentle manner eased my concerns. He hesitated, but eventually admitted he had no real place to sleep, except maybe a bus station bench. So I offered him the small guest room upstairs, which mostly served as storage these days. He looked genuinely grateful, as if I'd given him the moon. That night, after showing him the spare blankets and extra towels, I retreated to my bedroom. My thoughts swirled. What are you doing? Catherine, This could be risky. Yet the alternative, sending him away to roam in the rain, felt heartless. I've always believed in helping where I can, even if life has taught me caution. I decided to trust my instincts, and my instincts told me James was a good person, just a bit lost. I slept fitfully, images of my children ghosting through my dreams. Adrian's little boy grin with missing teeth. Janine playing with her first doll. Luke banging on pots and pans as if they were drums. Each memory glowed, then receded into darkness, replaced by the emptiness of a phone that never rang. I woke up at dawn with tears on my cheeks, blinking at the faint morning light creeping through the curtains. The house was quiet, and I wondered if James had already slipped out. I pulled on my robe, tiptoeing downstairs, only to find him in the kitchen, rummaging for cups. He jumped, nearly dropping a mug when he saw me. "Oh, good morning, Catherine. I was trying to make coffee, but I couldn't figure out which cabinet you keep it in," he said sheepishly. Laughter bubbled from my throat, an unfamiliar but welcome sound. "I'll give you a quick tour," I teased, showing him my cluttered cupboards. Soon the coffee machine gurgled, filling the room with the comforting scent of caffeine. I offered to make some scrambled eggs, and he gladly accepted, even though I rarely ate a big breakfast. His presence spurred me to cook more than usual, over plates of eggs and toast. We talked about the day ahead. I suggested he check the library bulletin board for job postings, reminding him of a small diner down the street that sometimes hired part-timers. He listened intently, nodding. "You know it's funny," he remarked. "I only came to this town because I heard there was construction work, but maybe I'll find something else." I sipped coffee, feeling a sense of purpose. "You never know. This could be the place you decide to settle." My voice was light, but inside, I felt an unexpected hope, almost as if I wanted him to stay around at least for a while. He thanked me again for my hospitality. "You really saved me from a rough night, Catherine. I won't forget it." A faint blush warmed my cheeks. "I'm just glad to help," I said simply. "Besides, I enjoy the company." An hour later, James slung on his backpack. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still cloudy. I offered him an old umbrella of mine, one with a slightly bent handle, just in case. He smiled, flipping it open. "Thank you, I'll bring it back later. Maybe if I find some yard work, I can earn a little to repay you." He left with a wave, disappearing down the street. The house felt strangely quiet without him. I realized with a mild shock that I hadn't once fixated on the hurt of Mother's Day since he arrived. I busied myself tidying up the kitchen, humming an aimless tune, my heart lighter than it had been in days. In the afternoon, I heard the phone ring. My pulse leapt. Could it be one of my children belatedly calling to apologize? But the caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. Turned out it was just a telemarketer. I let out a hollow laugh at my own desperation. Still, I refused to let the disappointment crush me again. I had something positive in my life now. However small, a new acquaintance who seemed grateful for kindness. That was enough to carry me through another day. In a world that sometimes felt cruelly indifferent, a single act of compassion could bloom into something bigger, something life-changing. I spent the rest of the day knitting in my cozy armchair, half listening to the radio. Every so often, I glanced out the window, wondering if James would return that evening or vanish from my life just as quickly as he'd appeared. Uncertainty flickered through me, but I took a deep breath and decided to trust the moment. Whatever happened next, I sensed that this encounter was no mere coincidence. If you were in Catherine's position, would you have trusted James enough to offer him shelter? Why or why not? Share your thoughts below. The next 2 days slipped by with surprising ease. James returned that very evening, a wide grin stretching across his face. He'd found a temporary gig helping a landscaper clear brush and plant flower beds around town. "They'll pay me a decent wage for a week's work," he told me, excitement shining in his eyes. "It's not permanent, but it's something." He also handed me the old umbrella I'd lent him along with a small envelope of cash. "For the food and bed you gave me," he explained. "I know it's not much, but I pressed the envelope back into his hand. Absolutely not. I won't take your money, I insisted. You need it more than I do. A flash of gratitude lit his face, and he gave a sheepish nod. I didn't push further. I sensed this was his way of maintaining dignity. Still, I refused to profit from his hardship. We eventually compromised. He agreed to buy me some groceries if he was going to keep sharing dinner in my kitchen. That made me laugh an unexpected burst of warmth that felt good in my chest. So it became an unspoken arrangement. James would come by in the evenings after work, grocery bag in hand, and help me cook dinner. I'd teach him simple recipes like chicken stir fry or vegetable soup, and in return, he'd fix small things around the house, a squeaky door hinge, a leaky faucet. Each day we fell into an easy camaraderie, chatting about everything from favorite foods to random childhood memories. One night, as we sat across from each other slurping steaming bowls of soup, I mustered the courage to ask something that had lingered in my mind. James, are you running from something or someone? My voice was gentle, but I worried he might clam up. He lowered his spoon, eyes flicking to the table. I guess you could say, I'm running from feeling stuck. Maybe I was in a bad place emotionally back home after my parents split and money got tight. Every day felt heavy. So I thought if I just kept moving, I'd find a spot that fit me better. Somewhere I could breathe. My heart went out to him. And have you found it yet? He shook his head, a rueful smile on his lips. Not exactly, but being here helping you, it feels more meaningful than drifting aimlessly. I'm starting to see that maybe I need community more than I realized. I nodded, understanding all too well the ache of loneliness. Well, you're welcome to stay here as long as you need, but I don't want to hold you back. If you ever need to move on. He raised a hand. I appreciate that, but for now I'm good here. A pause, then a soft laugh. I mean, I get a warm meal, and I get to see the look on your face when I fix something around the house. It's like you just won the lottery. I swatted him playfully with a dish towel. Don't tease me for being excited about a non-leaky faucet. Our laughter rang through the room, dispelling the gloom that had weighed me down only days before. It felt surreal how quickly life could shift. One moment I was a forgotten mother with a hollow ache in her heart. The next, I had a new friend who seemed to breathe life into these old walls. But that ache never fully disappeared. Every morning, I'd still glance at the silent phone, half expecting to see a missed call from Janine or Adrian or Luke. Every night, I'd check my messages waiting for a belated apology, an explanation, something. It never came. Mother's Day was now a memory, and apparently I was an afterthought to them, if even that. It stung, but James's presence helped me endure. One afternoon, while James was off landscaping, I received a text from my neighbor, Jill. Need help picking up supplies from hardware store. You free? I jumped at the invitation, ready for any distraction. We drove together to the big hardware warehouse in town, Jill chatting about a deck her husband planned to build. I tried to focus on the conversation, pushing away the pang that always surfaced when I heard about families doing projects together. While perusing shelves of nails and paint, Jill tapped my shoulder. By the way, that young man who's been staying with you, James, right? He seems nice. I blinked, slightly startled. You've seen him around, she smiled. Well, sure. We neighbors keep an eye out. I was curious, that's all. He's not. She hesitated as if searching for a polite phrase. He's not family, is he? I gave a short laugh. No, just someone who needed a helping hand. A friend, I guess. Jill nodded, relief evident in her eyes. Good for you, Catherine. You have such a big heart. I shrugged, not sure how to respond. A big heart, maybe? Or maybe just a lonely one. But I appreciated her support rather than suspicion. That evening, James and I tackled a chicken casserole recipe. He tried his hand at cutting vegetables, nearly chopping them into uneven chunks. I teased him for his poor knife skills, and he teased me for my mismatched cooking utensils. Despite the jokes, dinner turned out delicious, and we shared a small victory as we sat down to eat. After we finished, I brought out an old photo album. I wasn't sure why. Maybe I wanted to show him a glimpse of the life I once had. Page after page revealed pictures of me, with each of my children, birthday parties, first days of school, family vacations at the lake. James flipped through them slowly, studying each image with a quiet reverence. "You must miss them," he said softly, pausing at a photo of Luke playing guitar on the porch. I could see the empathy in his gaze. I pressed my lips together. "I do? I try to call sometimes, but they're always busy. Schedules conflict messages get lost. I suppose that's normal for grown kids, but—" My voice trailed off heavy with unspoken hurt. James set the album aside, looking me in the eye. "I'm sorry they forgot Mother's Day." "That's not right." Something in my chest loosened, tears prickling behind my eyelids. "Thank you," I whispered. "It's nice to have someone say that." He placed a hand over mine just for a moment. "You deserve to be remembered, Catherine." In that instant, I felt a complex swirl of gratitude and sorrow. The pain of my children's disregard welled up alongside relief that at least someone recognized I mattered. I blinked back tears, determined not to dampen the evening with my gloom. Instead, I mustered a small smile and said, "Enough about me. Tell me more about you." "Any interesting stories from landscaping today?" He obliged, regaling me with tales of weeding out stubborn roots and nearly toppling into a row of rose bushes. Our laughter soon overshadowed the earlier sadness, though I knew the ache still lurked beneath the surface. Yet for the first time in ages, I felt I had a genuine friend in my corner. That night, as James retreated to the guest room, I lingered in the living room, flipping through that photo album once more. I traced a finger over my children's smiling faces, my heart torn between longing and acceptance. My life had taken an unexpected turn, forging a new path with an unlikely ally. Perhaps this was a second chance to rediscover the warmth of human connection, to realize that love could sprout in surprising places, even if it wasn't coming from the people I expected. A week passed, then James's temporary landscaping job extended into more frequent gigs. The man who hired him, a local landscaper named Carl, must have appreciated his work ethic. Soon James was leaving every morning at sunrise, returning in the late afternoon, dirty but grinning. He'd regale me with tales of flower beds and lawn mowers, or show me pictures on his phone of the neat rows of petunias he planted that day. In the meantime, I rediscovered a routine that felt strangely fulfilling. I woke up early to brew coffee, laying out 2 mugs instead of 1. I typed up grocery lists, with more variety, excited to plan dinners we could cook together. I even found myself whistling as I dusted the living room or watered the potted plants on the porch. Some days I volunteered at the community center, something I'd done sporadically, but now it seemed more enjoyable having someone to talk to about it when I got home. The phone stayed silent as far as my children were concerned. No calls or messages from any of them. Despite the lingering ache, I found that each day the pain was a bit more bearable. Maybe it was the presence of a friend, or maybe I was simply learning to let go of expectations. Either way, I tried not to dwell on the empty silence from their end. One sunny afternoon, as James and I sat on the porch swing, sharing a pitcher of lemonade, I asked him about his plans. "Do you think you'll keep landscaping, or is there another direction you want to go?" He shrugged, wiping sweat from his brow. "I don't mind it for now. It pays the bills and I'm good at it. But I still feel like I'm drifting, like I don't know my purpose." He hesitated, sipping the lemonade. "I used to dream about being a teacher, if you can believe it. But that seems out of reach now." "Why would it be out of reach?" I asked gently, the porch swing squeaking as we rocked. He grimaced. "College costs money. Plus, I never had the best grades. I'm not sure I'd even get accepted again." A wave of empathy washed over me. "You're young, James. There's still time. Maybe you just need the right motivation or the right people cheering you on. Life can surprise you, you know. He cast me a thoughtful glance, and a slow smile spread across his face. You're right. This last month has definitely surprised me. Finding myself living in a friendly older lady's guest room wasn't on my bingo card. I swatted his arm playfully. Older lady indeed. I'll have you know, I can still walk circles around you if I set my mind to it. We both laughed, the tension easing, but his words echoed in my head. Life can surprise you. They reminded me that perhaps my own life still had room for surprises. I wasn't just a forgotten mother. I could be a friend, a mentor, or simply a warm presence in someone else's journey. Later that day, I decided to tackle a project I'd been putting off for years. Cleaning the attic, dust bunnies, and cobwebs aside, I knew the attic held boxes of old mementos from my children's childhood drawings, trophies, even some baby clothes. It felt daunting, but I wanted to face it head on. I asked James for help, and he readily agreed. We climbed the rickety ladder leading to the attic hatch. The musty smell of old cardboard and stale air greeted us. As we flicked on a single bare light bulb, I coughed, swatting away dust motes swirling in the dim glow. I haven't been up here in years, I admitted, scanning the cramped space stacked with boxes. James brushed his hands together. Let's see what treasure we find. Where do we start? We started with a box labeled Janine Elementary School. Inside were countless art projects, finger paintings, macaroni sculptures, a certificate for outstanding reader in second grade. My throat tightened at the memory of her toothy grin the day she won that award. For a moment, sadness nudged my heart, but I steadied myself. These are happy memories, I reminded myself. James lifted out a construction paper Mother's Day card that read, I love you, Mommy, in clumsy crayons. She made this, he asked softly. I swallowed. Yes, she must have been 7 or 8. She was so proud of that card, gave it to me alongside burnt toast and orange juice in bed. I chuckled at the recollection. We rummaged further Adrian's old soccer trophies, Luke's baby blanket. Each item carried a story, a piece of the life I once shared with my kids. James listened intently as I recounted each memory, occasionally asking questions. He treated these artifacts with reverence as though they were precious relics from a lost civilization. After a couple of hours, the emotional weight grew heavier. I sat on a dusty trunk, old photo albums in hand, tears threatening at the corners of my eyes. I don't understand how we drifted so far apart. Where did I go wrong? James crouched beside me, resting a hand on my shoulder. You didn't go wrong, Catherine. Sometimes families just drift. People get wrapped up in their own lives. It's not fair, but it doesn't mean you failed. I nodded, pressing my lips together. Still feels like I lost them somewhere along the line. He squeezed my shoulder gently, then offered a smile that was both sympathetic and encouraging. You have a lot of love to give. I see it every day. Maybe your kids will come around when they realize what they're missing. I sniffed, forcing a small grin. And in the meantime, I guess I'll adopt you as my pseudo-child, huh? James laughed, the sound echoing in the cramped attic. I'd be honored, though you might regret it when I eat all your snacks. The tension broke and we returned to sorting. We carefully repacked some items, labeling them clearly. Others I decided to donate or discard. By the time we finished, dusk had fallen outside, and the attic felt somehow lighter, both physically and emotionally. We carted the sorted boxes down, closing that chapter for the day. As we prepared a quick dinner, my mind buzzed with the memories we'd stirred up. The old feelings of regret and longing were there, but so was a sense of release. Sharing them with James, a compassionate ear, gave me a different perspective. Maybe it was okay to carry those memories in my heart, even if my children had forgotten them. They were still valid, still shaped who I was. That night, while James dozed off in the guest room, I stood by the living room window, gazing at the moonlit street. The phone sat on the side table, silent as ever. Yet for the first time in a long time, I found myself at peace with that silence. I had grown children who might be distant, but I also had new connections forming in unexpected ways. Perhaps that was enough for now. After all, life's greatest gifts can appear when we least expect them. A stranger turned friend, a quiet home turned refuge, a lonely heart finding renewed purpose in the simple act of caring for another. And maybe, just maybe, those small miracles could help me heal the old wounds of being forgotten. One gentle day at a time, a few more weeks blurred by in a comfortable rhythm. The town's spring flowers gave way to the heat of early summer, and James continued to pick up odd jobs for Carl's landscaping business. He even got recommended for a few private projects, repainting a neighbor's fence, mowing lawns for the elderly on our street. Each new gig added a layer of stability to his once rootless existence. Meanwhile, I found myself feeling invigorated. Seeing James work so diligently turning scraggly lawns into tidy spaces of greenery inspired me to beautify my own yard. One Saturday, I suggested we transform the neglected side garden behind my house. It was overrun with weeds, the soil dry and unforgiving. James grinned at the idea, and off we went to the local nursery, picking out seed packets, small flowers, and a bag of good quality soil mix. Under the hot sun, we tilled the earth side by side, pulling out stubborn weeds. Sweat trickled down our foreheads, but we laughed through it, pausing only for water breaks. By the late afternoon, we had a neat row of marigolds, petunias, and little clusters of herbs planted. James hammered a short wooden sign I'd painted with the words, "Hope grows here." It felt symbolic in a way, like we were both planting seeds of new beginnings in that patch of dirt. Our newly planted garden soon became a favorite hangout spot. Each morning, I'd step out to water the seedlings, marveling at their slow but steady growth. It reminded me that healing, whether of land or heart, comes in small increments. Every day was a chance to nourish something fragile, trusting it might bloom into beauty. Yet the looming question of my children remained. As June rolled in, I wondered if maybe they'd plan a visit or call me just to say hello. My birthday was coming up in a few weeks. Could they possibly forget that too? Or would they remember and come around? The uncertainty gnawed at me, though I tried not to let it overshadow the progress I was making with James by my side. One evening, I mustered the courage to text each of my children just to check in. "Hi, sweetie, how have you been? Hope all is well." I sent versions of that message to Adrian, Janine, and Luke, then waited. Hours went by and no response. I told myself they might be busy or asleep. By the time I crawled into bed, my phone was still stubbornly silent. The next morning, I found James in the kitchen, flipping pancakes, quite the surprise. A few burnt edges hinted at his inexperience, but he looked proud nonetheless. "Morning," I said, forcing cheerfulness. "You're cooking now," he chuckled. "Trying anyway. Figured you deserved a break." My heart softened. "That's very thoughtful. I'll get the coffee started." As I measured out coffee grounds, James asked, "Everything okay? You look a little down." I hesitated, then shrugged. "I texted my kids last night. Haven't heard back." He glanced at me with sympathy. "I'm sorry." I inhaled slowly. "Me too, but I'm used to it, I guess." My voice carried a tinge of bitterness I couldn't hide. James lowered the spatula. "You don't have to just accept it, you know. Have you tried calling them directly?" I shook my head, crossing my arms. "I'm afraid it'll feel too forced, like I'm begging for their attention. I don't want pity invites or rushed phone calls where they're half listening." He tilted his head. "But it might be better than staying in limbo, right? At least you'd hear their voices, maybe understand what's going on in their heads." I considered his words. Maybe he had a point. My fear of rejection kept me from being proactive, but was passivity any better? We decided I'd try calling later that day, a plan that both terrified and relieved me. After breakfast, we parted ways. James off to his landscaping job, me heading to the community center for my volunteer shift. Yet his advice lingered in my mind. By the time I returned home in the early afternoon, a wave of resolve had washed over me. I grabbed my phone, sat on the living room couch, and dialed Adrian first. 4 rings, then voicemail. Hey, you've reached Adrian. Leave a message. My heart sank, but I left a polite note. Hi, Adrian. It's Mom. Just checking in to see how you are. Give me a call when you can. Miss you next up, Janine. The phone rang twice, then she picked up, sounding breathless. Hello, Janine, sweetie, it's Mom, I said, relief flooding me. How are you? There was a pause, then a rustle. Mom? Hi, sorry, I'm in the middle of something. Can I call you back in a bit? My chest tightened with disappointment, but I forced a bright tone. Of course, whenever you're free. She mumbled a quick goodbye, and the line went dead. At least she picked up. That was something. Finally, I dialed Luke, straight to voicemail. I left a similar message, the uncertainty weighing heavier now. With trembling fingers, I set the phone aside. At least I tried, I thought. Hours passed in a slow crawl. Dusk settled outside, painting the sky orange and pink. No returned calls, no texts. My frustration rose. Are they truly this busy, or am I that forgettable? Just as I was about to lose hope, the phone rang. I nearly dropped the dish I was washing in surprise. I dashed to the living room, heart pounding to see Janine's name on the screen. Hello, I answered, trying to sound composed. Mom. Hey, she said, her tone polite but a little distant. Sorry about earlier. The kids were going wild, and I was trying to get dinner ready. I forced a laugh. I understand. How are they? How's life? She launched into a quick update. Her work was hectic. The kids were in soccer camp. Her husband was traveling for business. Every sentence felt breathless, like she was multitasking. I listened intently, my heart simultaneously glad to hear her voice and stinging at how rushed she sounded. She asked, How about you, Mom? Everything okay? I hesitated, wondering how honest to be. Should I tell her how alone I'd felt, how hurt I was that they forgot Mother's Day, or just keep it light? In the end, I opted for a gentle middle ground. I'm managing, had a quiet Mother's Day, a guilty pause on her end. Oh, yeah, sorry, we meant to call. Things got crazy, you know? It happens, I said softly, not trusting myself to say more. We talked a few more minutes, superficial chatter about the weather, her kids' activities. She promised to visit sometime, though no concrete date was set. I swallowed my disappointment. At least she'd called. That was more than the others. When the conversation ended, I hung up, a strange mixture of relief and sadness swirling within me. At least Janine was safe living her life, but there was no warmth, no real connection. Is this all that's left for me, I wondered? James returned later that evening, sweaty and exhausted. When he saw my face, he asked gently, Did you call them? I nodded, spoke to Janine. Kind of. He offered a warm smile and a pat on my shoulder. That's a start, Catherine. Don't lose hope yet. I exhaled, letting the day's tension dissolve a bit. Maybe James was right. Maybe it was a start. But for now, I had to accept that my children's lives had taken them far, far from my orbit. And if I couldn't rely on them for comfort and validation, I'd have to find it in my own day-to-day joys. My volunteer work, my newly planted garden, the presence of a kind young friend who refused to let me face my loneliness alone. Early July arrived, bringing with it a warm breeze that rustled through my newly flourishing backyard garden. The marigolds glowed bright under the summer sun, and even a few tomatoes had sprouted where James and I had decided to plant a tiny vegetable patch. Each morning, I'd head outside with a watering can, marveling at the green leaves and vibrant petals. It felt good to nurture something and watch it grow, a gentle reminder that life can keep blooming no matter the season. In between his landscaping jobs, James had begun picking up small painting gigs and handyman work for neighbors. Word traveled fast in a community like ours. Once folks realized he was reliable, requests poured in. There was Miss Harding down the street who needed her porch rail, repaired Mr. Johnson's leaky shed roof, a local cafe's bathroom that needed new tile. James tackled each project with quiet determination, returning in the evenings with stories of what he'd fixed that day. I found new purpose in helping him keep track of his finances. We set up a simple ledger on my old laptop income from each job expenses for supplies, a portion set aside as savings. He was reluctant at first, insisting he could handle it on his own, but I convinced him that a second pair of eyes wouldn't hurt. Over tea at my dining table, we'd punch numbers into spreadsheets, and I'd teach him small tips about budgeting that I'd learned over decades of raising children on a tight budget. "You're basically my accountant now," James joked one night, nibbling on a cookie I'd baked. "I should pay you a fee." I swatted the air. "Your gratitude is fee enough. Besides, I enjoy having something constructive to do. Beat sitting around waiting for a phone call that might never come." He gave me a soft, understanding smile. "You still haven't heard back from Adrian or Luke?" I shook my head, not a word. "Janine gave me a quick call last week, but it was rushed. The other two are radio silent." I let out a sigh, stirring my tea. I try not to let it get to me, but, well, it does. James reached across the table to give my hand a comforting squeeze. "I get it. My own family wasn't exactly close after my parents split. Everyone scattered. Sometimes it hurts more than we realize, you know." I nodded, meeting his empathetic gaze. This shared sense of loss of longing for connection. Perhaps it was one of the reasons we understood each other so well. "But enough about that," I said, exhaling. "How about we watch a movie tonight? I can pop some popcorn." James grinned. "Sounds great. I haven't done a movie night in ages." So that became our evening ritual. Two unlikely roommates relaxing on the couch, munching on popcorn, while an old classic played on my ancient TV nights. Like those made me feel something close to contentment. Sure, I wasn't living the life I once imagined surrounded by grandkids and frequent visits from my children, but it was a life where I found companionship and support in a place I never expected. That had to count for something. Yet life seldom remains peaceful for long. One humid afternoon, while I was volunteering at the community center, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I stepped outside to answer it, the sun beating down on my neck. "Hello," I said, bracing for another telemarketer. "Is this Catherine Maloney?" a female voice asked. It sounded brisk, official. My heart skipped. "Yes, that's me. Miss Maloney? This is Officer Kelly from the Maplewood Police Department. In the next county, I'm calling about your son, Luke." My vision swam. Luke, my mind conjured all sorts of grim scenarios in a heartbeat. Is he okay?" She cleared her throat. "He's not hurt, ma'am, but we have him in custody for a minor infraction, trespassing and disturbance at a local music venue. He gave us your number as an emergency contact." Relief and dread battled in my chest. I see. What do I need to do?" She explained that Luke was being held overnight, and if a family member could come post bail or sign him out, he'd be free to go pending a court date. The venue owners weren't pressing serious charges, but standard procedure meant he had to appear in front of a judge. My pulse thundered. Luke had gotten arrested. "I'll come," I managed to say, cheeks burning with a mix of anger and worry. We arranged the details, and I hung up with trembling fingers. My son, my youngest baby, was in jail, and he hadn't bothered to call or visit in months. Now he needed me. Fear knotted in my stomach, overshadowed by a flicker of exasperation. Why was I only needed when things went wrong? After leaving a hurried message at the community center, I rushed home. I needed to gather some cash, my ID, and figure out transportation. Maplewood was an hour's drive away. My car was old, but hopefully reliable enough to make the trip. Anxiety thrummed in my veins. Would I even recognize Luke? The last time we'd spoken, he was breezing through town with his band, too busy to stop by for dinner. James found me racing around the living room, rummaging for my purse and car keys. His eyes widened at my panicked state. "Catherine, what's going on?" I rattled off the story, my voice choking with emotion. "Luke's in jail for some silly trespassing charge. I have to go bail him out. I can't believe this." James immediately grabbed my coat from the hook, pressing it into my hands. "I'll drive you?" "No, no, you have work," I began. He cut me off, face serious. "Work can wait. This is your son, Catherine. You shouldn't go alone if you're upset." Tears stung my eyes, though I tried to blink them away. "James, you've done enough already." He shook his head, gently guiding me toward the door. "Don't argue. We'll take my car. Let's go." And so we sped off the roads, blurring in my anxious mind. James's presence grounded me, reminding me to breathe. When we arrived at the Maplewood Police Department, the overhead fluorescent lights and cold tiles set my nerves on edge. I approached the desk, stumbling through the process of signing paperwork, paying a small bail fee. My heart hammered each minute, stretching like an eternity. Finally, an officer led Luke into the waiting area. My breath caught. He was thinner than I remembered, eyes, bloodshot hair matted. He wore scuffed-up boots and a wrinkled T-shirt with some band's logo. He looked at me, and for a second I saw a flicker of shame cross his face. "Mom," he said quietly, shuffling forward. My anger and worry fused into a single wave of relief. I pulled him into a hug, tears slipping free before I could stop them. His arms wrapped around me hesitantly, as though he'd forgotten the feel of a mother's embrace. James stood to the side, allowing us a moment of reunion. The officer gave me a final set of instructions about Luke's court date, and we left. Outside, the warm night air felt suffocating. Luke mumbled an apology, avoiding my gaze. I wasn't sure if I wanted to scold him or hold him. Exhaustion pressed on my chest, overshadowing all else. We climbed into James's car. Luke in the back seat, silent the entire ride home. My head spun with questions. What had happened? Why was he trespassing? Was he still playing with that band? Did he have anywhere to stay? But the tension was too thick to wade through. We drove in uneasy stillness, James's concerned eyes flicking to me in the rearview mirror. At last, we arrived at my house. Luke climbed out, slinging a battered backpack over his shoulder. Under the porch light, I studied his weary face. He looked older, more worn, like a lost boy. No one had bothered to find. My motherly instincts roared up despite everything. I couldn't abandon him. Now James quietly unlocked the door, stepping aside so we could enter. And thus, in a single night, my complicated life grew even more tangled. My once absent son was now under my roof, leaning on me for support. Just as I'd begun to find solace in a new friendship and routine, a maelstrom of emotions raged inside me, but one thought stood out. I won't let him slip away again, not if I can help it. The next few days felt like a tightrope walk. Luke slept in my living room, refusing the spare guest room James had been using. He seemed distrustful of James, or maybe just ashamed of his situation. I caught glimpses of the boy I once knew, quiet, introspective, with a fierce, independent streak, but layered now with cynicism and regret. He'd barely unpacked his battered backpack, rummaging inside, only for his phone charger or a change of clothes. I tried to ask questions gently. "Are you still in a band? Do you have somewhere else you can stay?" But Luke brushed them off. "I'm fine, Mom. Let me handle my own stuff." It hurt, but I tried giving him space. At least he was under my roof, safe from further trouble, even if he acted resentful. Meanwhile, James tiptoed around Luke's presence, offering friendly nods. He even tried to strike up conversation about music, but Luke shut him down with short, mumbled replies. I watched, torn between gratitude for James's patience and frustration at Luke's dismissive attitude. We had a small crisis on the third evening. Luke got a phone call from someone, maybe a bandmate, maybe a friend. His voice escalated, agitated, pacing across the living room. "No, I'm broke," he nearly shouted. "I'm stuck here for a while. Don't call me again if you're just looking for money." Then he hung up, flinging his phone on the couch. I ventured closer softly, asking Luke, "Is everything okay?" He rounded on me, eyes flashing. "No, it's not okay. My so-called friends keep hounding me for cash. I have none. I'm living on your couch like a failure. Just leave me alone." He stormed out the front door, slamming it behind him. My heart pounded. I almost chased after him, but James put a hand on my arm. "Give him a minute, Catherine. He needs to cool down." I swallowed, tears burning at the corners of my eyes. "I don't want him running off. He's already so distant." James nodded sympathetically. "I'll keep an eye out. He'll come back once he calms down." True to James's prediction, Luke returned half an hour later, cheeks flushed from the summer heat, refusing eye contact. He stomped to the couch, put in earbuds, and stared at the ceiling. I wanted to hold him, ask him about his pain, but fear kept me rooted. He looked so unreachable, a storm cloud ready to burst. That night, James quietly asked if he should find somewhere else to stay, giving Luke space. "I don't want to crowd him." "It's your family, Catherine," he explained, a tinge of sadness in his voice. A surge of panic filled me. James had become a bright spot in my life, a stabilizing force. "No, please," I whispered. "I need you here. This house is big enough for everyone. Luke will adjust." He hesitated, then agreed, gently squeezing my hand. "Okay, whatever you need." So we forged on in an uneasy truce. I spent my mornings as usual watering the garden, volunteering at the community center. James left for his odd jobs, and Luke slept in, usually not stirring until noon. By the time I got home, he'd be slouched on the couch, flipping channels or staring at his phone. I'd attempt conversation. Sometimes he'd grunt a reply. Sometimes he'd vanish outside for a walk. One afternoon, though, I found him in the backyard staring at the marigolds. I approached cautiously as though he were a wild animal ready to bolt. "Beautiful, aren't they?" I said, kneeling beside the blooms. He shrugged, fidgeting with the hem of his worn t-shirt. "Yeah, didn't know you were into gardening." I offered a small smile. James helped a lot, but yes, I've always liked plants. They're peaceful. I paused, sensing an opening. "How about you, still love music?" He snorted softly. "Guess so. Not that it matters now. My band kicked me out after I couldn't pay my share of travel costs. They said I was dead weight." A self-deprecating laugh escaped him. "They're not wrong." My heart clenched. "You're not dead weight." "Luke, you've just hit a rough patch. Everyone does at some point." He shook his head. "Maybe. But I can't keep mooching off you forever. I need to figure out my life." His voice wavered on the edge of vulnerability, then slammed shut. "Anyway, I'm going for a walk." He trudged back inside, leaving me exhaling a shaky breath. At least we talked for a moment, I told myself. Baby steps. Eventually, Luke's court date arrived, a brief hearing for his trespassing charge. I insisted on driving him to the courthouse in Maplewood, and James came along for support. Luke wore borrowed slacks and a button-down shirt I'd kept from my late husband. It didn't quite fit, but it looked more respectable than his torn jeans. The judge was merciful, seeing that it was a first offense and no real damage was done. Luke got off with a small fine and a warning to stay out of trouble. Relief flooded me as we left the courtroom, though Luke seemed more sullen than ever. He stuffed his hands in his pockets, muttering thanks under his breath when I paid the fine. I gently reminded him he could repay me whenever he got back on his feet. On the drive home, tension simmered. James attempted small talk, but Luke stared out the window, giving one-word answers. My chest felt tight as though the fragile connection we'd glimpsed in the backyard had fizzled. I prayed silently for patience, for some sign that Luke wanted to mend our relationship. As we pulled into the driveway, Luke abruptly said, "Maybe I should get a job, like a real job, earn some cash, then I'll be out of your hair." I spun to face him in the back seat, heart skipping. "That's a good idea," I said, measured calm in my voice. "We can help you look. James knows some folks who might have openings." James nodded. "I can ask Carl if he needs extra help with landscaping. Or there's the diner. They're always looking for servers or dishwashers." Luke scratched at his chin. "Yeah, sure, whatever. I just can't keep living off you guys like this." His gaze flicked away, but I sensed a crack in his aloof facade. So began the process of helping Luke find work. We spent a tense few days crafting a simple resume, mostly listing odd gigs he'd done for his band or part-time stints at convenience stores. James made calls on Luke's behalf, and I scoured the library's bulletin board. After multiple rejections, we finally snagged an interview for Luke at a local music store, a place that sold instruments, offered lessons, even hosted small concerts. Ironically, it played right into Luke's passion for music. The night before his interview, Luke paced the hallway, biting his nails. I stopped him gently. "You'll do fine, sweetheart." He looked at me, something akin to longing in his eyes. "Yeah, thanks, Mom." Those two words, thanks. Mom felt like a lifeline in the swirling sea of tension. I offered him a warm smile, and in that fleeting moment, I sensed a bridge forming between us. Maybe my lost boy was finding his way back home. Maybe we'd managed to heal old wounds. And maybe, just maybe, this house could hold us all together. My grown son, my newfound friend, and me, if we were willing to keep trying. Luke's interview at the music store went better than I dared hope. He came home that afternoon, a bit of color in his cheeks, an official name tag in his hand. "They hired me," he announced, trying to sound casual, but failing to hide a small grin. I felt tears well up, but I only gave him a quick hug, not wanting to spook him. "That's wonderful. When do you start tomorrow?" he replied, glancing over at James. "They said I can help with stocking customer service, maybe even testing instruments if needed." A flicker of pride shone in his eyes. James clapped him on the shoulder. "Nice one, man. That's perfect for you." "Music's your thing, right?" Luke nodded, cheeks reddening. "Yeah, I guess it is." Over the next few days, Luke settled into a semblance of routine, waking early, heading to the music store, returning in the evening, tired but upbeat. Each time he walked through the door, I'd see a bit more of that rebellious tension melt away. He even started talking to James about guitar brands and singing techniques, occasionally drifting into animated conversation. Seeing them bond felt like a miracle. Two wandering souls forging a tentative friendship under my roof. One evening after closing at the music store, Luke brought home a battered acoustic guitar he'd borrowed. "They said I can practice on it, maybe teach a beginner's class once I'm comfortable," he explained with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. We all ended up on the back porch under the fading summer light. The newly planted flowers swayed in the warm breeze, and a single candle flickered on the wooden railing. Luke strummed the guitar, tentative at first, then gaining confidence. A few chords, a soft melody. I recognized it as a lullaby I used to sing him when he was little. The nostalgia hit me like a wave, tears pricking my eyes. James listened raptly, nodding along. When the tune ended, he said, "You've got talent, Luke. Don't let it go to waste." Luke shrugged, though a shy smile curved his lips. "Thanks." He glanced at me, awkward but hopeful. "Remember that lullaby, Mom?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Of course. I used to sing it whenever you had nightmares." His gaze flicked to the guitar strings. "Appreciate you letting me stay here. I know I've been a jerk sometimes." Emotion swelled in my chest. "I'm just glad you're here, Luke. We all go through rough patches." He set the guitar aside, running a hand through his hair. Maybe once I have a few paychecks, I can contribute to groceries or, I don't know, fix up my old room. My heart fluttered. That would be lovely. That night, I practically floated to bed, the memory of Luke's guitar chords, an uncertain smile warming me like a balm. Yes, my other children remained distant, but at least Luke was here physically and emotionally. It was a start. I allowed myself the optimism that perhaps the circle of family could mend, if only one child at a time. A few weeks later, my birthday arrived. I'd almost forgotten it in the swirl of changes, but James picked up on the date from some paperwork. He declared we had to celebrate. We'll make a nice dinner, maybe a cake. He insisted. Luke chimed in, offering to help, which surprised me. Usually birthdays were just me and a quiet memory of what once was. But now I had Luke and James both determined to make it special. The morning of my birthday, I rose to find the kitchen bustling. James whisked batter for a chocolate cake, and Luke carefully greased a baking pan. Morning, old lady, Luke joked, though his tone was light. I feigned offense, tossing a dish towel at him. Laughter filled the room, a far cry from the heartbreak of Mother's Day months ago. By evening, the cake was frosted and the dining table set. James had even strung a few balloons across the living room doorway. We feasted on roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and fresh vegetables from our little garden. My heart brimmed with gratitude. This was the warmth I'd yearned for. As we finished dessert, the doorbell rang. My eyes darted to James and Luke, wondering if they'd invited a neighbor. But both seemed equally puzzled. I stood to answer it, and to my shock, there stood Janine on the porch, my daughter cradling a gift bag in her arms, an apologetic smile on her face. "Mom," she began, voice soft. "I know it's late, but I wanted to surprise you." Stunned, I ushered her inside, my heart pounding. Luke popped up from the table, eyes widening at the sight of his sister. "Janine, what are you?" She glanced between us, noticing James' the birthday decorations, the half-eaten cake. "I'm sorry I haven't called much. I realized it was your birthday, and it felt wrong not to come see you." I swallowed a surge of emotion, stepping forward to embrace her. For a moment, I worried she'd recoil, but she wrapped her free arm around me in a genuine hug. The gift bag crinkled between us, and we both chuckled awkwardly. Luke cleared his throat. "It's good to see you, sis." Janine nodded, offering him a cautious smile. "You too. Heard you've been staying here." She turned to James, who waited politely. "And you are?" James introduced himself, a hint of nerves in his voice. "Just a friend living here too, helping out?" She blinked, obviously confused, but didn't pry. Instead, she extended the gift bag to me. "Happy birthday, Mom. I got you some nice slippers and a new teapot. Thought you might like them." Tears welled in my eyes. It wasn't about the slippers or teapot. It was the gesture, the fact she'd come. "Thank you, darling. That means so much." We invited her to sit to share the leftover cake. The conversation was stilted at first, like we were all learning the steps to a forgotten dance. But the tension gradually eased as Janine asked about the garden, about Luke's new job, about James's odd jobs. I watched her carefully, noting the guilt flickering in her eyes whenever she glanced my way. She feels bad for staying away, I thought with quiet relief. Maybe this was the first step toward reconciliation. After an hour, she apologized for leaving so soon. She had to drive back and her kids were with a neighbor. But before she left, she gave me a longer hug, one that felt genuine. "I'm sorry for forgetting Mother's Day," she whispered. "I promise I'll do better, Mom." My throat tightened. "I appreciate that, honey. Just hearing it means more than you know." When she drove away, Luke and James hovered beside me, each wearing a faint smile. We lingered on the porch, the night air fragrant with summer blooms. I clutched the gift bag, heart brimming with cautious hope. Perhaps the bridge was being rebuilt. One phone call, one visit at a time. We returned inside the house feeling warmer, filled with the echoes of old love that might yet revive. That night, as I slid under the covers, I savored the contentment that had eluded me for so long. My children weren't perfect, nor was I, but there was still time to mend, still chances for unexpected blessings. A mother might be forgotten, but she can also be remembered again if hearts remain open. And in the glow of that realization, I drifted to sleep finally at peace. Have you ever found hope or comfort in an unexpected friend or situation, just like Catherine did with James? Share your personal experiences and thoughts below.